Hello and welcome to the Mission-Led Business, Life and Content podcast. I said that wrong. I'm still getting used to it. It's supposed to start with content, but I've gone straight in with business. But actually that's the point. We're with this particular podcast, I am taking imperfect action and I am showing up and I'm getting things wrong. So if you're listening either on replay of this in years time, then you'll be thinking, oh my God, Lisa was so shit at it. She's so much better now. And if you're watching now, just know, just join me on the journey and embrace the journey. So this podcast is for tired but inspired business owners and solopreneurs who are looking for a way to bring more joy, more connection, more purpose into their lives. I am joined today by somebody who actually was a massive factor in this even existing in the first place. Carmen Makepeace. We are going to talk about the importance of bringing compassion into the conversation on ideal clients. And this is a conversation that me and Carmen have had a lot, because she's been my client and we've been working together now quite closely since October, and she's in the process of expanding her thriving in-person massage therapy business and putting it online so that she can extend the support and the impact that she's having and reach more people. But by building this new chapter in her life, we're very conscious and we're talking a lot about how that business can nurture her more than her current business model does, because if you're doing anything in person, there's only so much you can do. And so it's that transition that she's going through at the moment, and that, you know, we've been having this conversation about ideal clients that are able to nurture us as well, and this idea of compassion. And there's so much there, and it just had to be brought to the podcast space. I want to tell you so much about Carmen as an introduction. I want to tell you that she's a nuclear physicist. I want to tell you that as well as running her business, she's also navigating her own challenges with her own brain injury. She brings a lot to the table. And so that's why not only have I invited her on a guest, but because she was there at the birth of this idea, I was like, right, Carmen, you're going to be a co-host. So welcome, Carmen, not just to today, but to the Mission-Led Content Business and Life podcast, because together we'll be doing future episodes where we will both be interviewing other people who bring something new to the table and bring new perspectives on this mission-led journey that we're on. So I won't embarrass Carmen anymore. Carmen, hi, you can speak for yourself now.
Hello. Hi. Thank you for that amazing introduction.
Well, I was going to say, actually, is there anything that you feel, if you were like, and I'm putting you on the spot here because I didn't say I was going to say this, but if you're thinking, what is it? What has Lisa missed? What is it that Lisa didn't say that's really important that people know about you?
I think like my job title is a bit tricky because yes, I am a massage therapist, but I've really branched out. And basically nowadays I just say I work with people in pain. Like I'm a chronic pain specialist, and I get them from A to B out of pain. But that A to B is quite a long process, and it's a lovely one. I really enjoy working with clients, and it's complex, and you've got to be there for a person fully. And I think that's me, if that makes sense.
That is you. Yeah. And you're absolutely right. It's you know, it's almost like me wanting to put that nuclear physicist bit on, apart from the fact that I find it incredibly mind-blowing that like that anyone can do that, but that you've had this whole range of
journeys,
experience, and knowledge and wisdom, and you bring it all to the table, literally your table, and I find that really enriches our conversations. And so, not that there's just a massage therapist by any means,
sure,
but I can absolutely acknowledge that doesn't even scratch the surface of what you actually do, what you stand for, and the approach that you take that is very different to what people may have in their head when they think of a massage therapist.
So definitely,
that's really important to have that acknowledgement and awareness. So thank you for adding that, Carmen. Very important.
You're welcome. Thank you.
So So, our conversation today is, as I've said, bringing compassion to the conversation on Ideal Client. And I'm really curious to know well, I do know if I'm honest. I'm really curious to share what does this, when I say, bringing compassion into this conversation, what does that mean to you? What does that look like? Or what has it become since we've been having
For
these
us.
conversations? Yeah.
Yeah, I think compassion is, it's like a fundamental building block to life anyway, right? Like if you're going through a healing journey, and obviously I do talk about that a lot. I'm so sorry.
It's absolutely, we're in a space where I tell people
There
to
you go.
like understand their messaging and stuff, and that's a huge part of it, that you're messaging. So yeah,
Yeah.
you don't
Yeah.
have to apologize.
It's
Don't
huge.
ever catch me don't ever let me catch you apologizing for that again.
Thank you. So I think like, yeah, if you're going through a healing journey, and I would suggest gently that most people on the planet are in one form or another, whether it's dealing with like their own upbringing and psychology, like because we all have niggles. There are a few like not skeletons, but maybe like toe bones in the cupboard, right? Like, and everybody's trying to
Not skeletons, but toe bones.
toe bones. I don't know why I said that.
I'm here for it.
But everybody's trying to navigate, like, and figure out where they fit in, what's their purpose, like, how are they going to be happy, whether those values are going to shift and change with different individuals. I think the fundamental premise comes down to compassion and listening and connecting deeply into our whys. And when it comes to like business and clients and client therapist interaction, in my case, but like in your case, like professional client interactions, like I think like to lead and to model compassion for our clients, it almost has to start with us. We have to be really clear on what we're offering ourselves, and when that's coming from a place of authenticity, balance with professionalism, which is I think hard to do.
Very hard, and it changes.
Yeah,
Shift for you, for
absolutely.
yeah.
And like and from that place, how do we then model and make space and allow others to really give themselves what they deserved all along? But it takes that, I think, that courage to do it first and model the behavior outwards. And it's amazing then what comes back in reflection. Like I love working with women, especially, like love men, no problem with men, but but like so
We're
often
talking
like I
about
have,
ideal clients here, so
yeah.
we say that in this context, that it's just your experiences
Mm,
that you've really honoured and enjoyed some specific journeys that have fallen
mm,
um,
definitely.
in that box of of a woman, but it doesn't mean that it negates any of the other journeys or experiences you've had with your other clients. I'm just
Yeah.
adding that from the perspective of, as we're talking about ideal clients and we're thinking about how we define them, you can say your ideal client is a woman, but it's not just a woman. It's a woman who has a particular approach, and they're at a particular point in their journey when they come to you, and they have had particular experiences that have allowed them to be open to
Yes.
healing, for that part of healing that you're providing, for that more whole healing.
Mm,
The thing that really strikes me when you're talking is that whole thing of, like, when we're thinking about ideal clients and we're thinking about compassion, that whole idea of, there's two sides of that. There's the compassion that we show to our clients and the compassion that we show to ourselves, and they're interchangeable. And so often I see people in business like solopreneurs, who are carrying it all, they're keeping on all the hats, and then it eats them up. So it could be me not beating myself up for not posting enough, or not writing enough, or not doing enough, because I think, well, I'm teaching this, so I should be able to do
perfect.
this. I should be perfect. And I'm not
Yeah.
showing myself compassion in that time. And that can range from all sorts of things to all, like so many people I know, really, like none of us are perfect at all the things all the time. And if we're teaching something and supporting somebody in something, it doesn't mean we're doing that from a place of perfection ourselves. We can actually bring more honesty to the journey and be more authentic when we show up and say, do you know what, I struggle with that too. Yeah, you're right, that there isn't an easy fix for that. Yeah, that's hard. You're right, that is hard. Rather than, well, if I can do it, you can too. Let me just show you the 7 steps and then you'll be fine. And then when somebody doesn't, because that's an easier marketing message, right?
It's clearer. And I think people like, I mean, I'm using the word people, but I think like as a whole, like I myself like clarity, like uncertainty.
Quick answer.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, it's not in our human nature
To enjoy uncertainty,
yeah,
I would
exactly.
say.
And certainly when it comes to, well, when it comes to all those, when it comes to life, this is why this podcast is a mission-led business content, business and life. Maybe I should shorten it. Because it does integrate into all of those different areas, and that's
Yeah.
really, really relevant. I'd love to hear more. I'd love you to share more about your journey in regards to your brain injury and how that shows up. Say you're having a day where, well, first of all, tell us how that does show up because you help people who are healing physically and you are healing physically.
Yes.
So how does
very
that
much.
show up, actually physically show up in your life? Like what things are more challenging because of that brain injury?
Quite a few things. The list is quite long. I tried to ignore. I tried not to write the whole list out sometimes because I'm like, oh, that's still long.
That invokes some compassion for yourself at that point.
Yeah, exactly. I think, where do I start? I have a lot of headaches. Like I have regular days, periods, months of headaches. I have a lot of spinal pain, which is fun, which turns up as like a extreme burning sensation in my back that makes me feel quite nauseous a lot of the time. When I get really tired and over fatigued in any way, like I can start to slur my words. I forget words, and memory as a whole is a challenge, like, which sounds a really weird thing to say. When I first had my injury, my short-term memory was gone. So like if I wanted to order a takeaway on my phone, which is such a mundane thing to do, and I love that this is my example, but I ordered a lot of takeaways.
Everyday thing, right?
There you go.
For me, it's an everyday thing. I don't mean an everyday thing.
Yeah. And hopefully it makes people realize that we're just human, because I don't have a perfect diet. I'm just going to say that and let it go. Like,
especially after a brain injury, I imagine, when you're
yeah,
absolutely,
exactly. And so I would want to order something. I'd have the idea of ordering something, and in the time it took me to put the digits of my passcode into my phone, I would have completely forgotten the thing I wanted to do that was just before entering the passcode. And the reason I could remember the passcode is because it was a memory that was prior to
memory. So it was those short things. That how long were you in that position for, where the short-term memory, because that's completely debilitating on a
it's devastating. Yeah, like
is the word.
I think it totally reduces you to past. Like present is tricky and future is really tricky. Like it can be associated like feelings of panic. Like the best way I can describe it is when you go into a shop when you're really tired. Everyone's had this experience, hopefully. Not just me being mad. But before the head injury if you were like really tired, you were overworked, you were stressed, you were near burnout, for instance, and you paid for something with your card, and then you place the card away and put it into a handbag or whatever bag you've got, and then you go, oh, where's my card? right? Like there's
I'm
that
famous
feeling.
for that.
There you go.
So yeah, you're all right on that. But that might just be me. That might just be us.
But it was that feeling
All the time. Like you've
every
constantly like I've
moment.
forgotten something because
Yeah.
you have,
Yeah.
that's
Like if I didn't have my keys in exactly the same place every day that a family member could say they're there and like enable me to walk to them, then I would have that feeling every moment. Like I would have that feeling making a cup of tea because I would like want to boil the kettle, but as I walked towards it, I'd forget what I was doing. So it was like extreme.
so
And
I
it lasted for about 18 months to 2 years.
wow, Carmen, I
Yeah.
cannot imagine living in that state of fear, basically, because that's what you're describing. It is this anxious state of feeling not, because it's not being in control, are you? Because you're not in control moment
You
by
don't feel, yeah, you don't feel like you have capacity. It makes you feel very vulnerable, very alone in the world. And it feels like real life's not happening because everybody else seems to be getting on with it. And you're just like, I don't know what I wanted a second ago, So it's a horrible feeling, honestly. Memory was the biggest, like pain is one thing, but not being able to function in the world
mm.
is an entirely different can of shit. Am I allowed to swear here? Thank you.
I click the button that says, "Is there any obscene language?" I always click yes, even if I don't think I've saw. Just because you never know. You never know
Yeah.
when I'm around. So were you at this point running before the brain injury? Were you running your own business?
No, I wasn't. I decided to start running my business like a few months before that happened, which is kind of the worst timing ever. So yeah, it was
So the
it was
business
so
got put on
tricky.
hold. The business got put
Yeah,
on hold while you were navigating that moment by moment.
yeah.
And so what in that process of healing and recovery, which you're still going through now, and that's the thing to remember. Like, yes, you can remember when you most of the time where you put your bank card or when you go into the
Absolutely. Yeah.
most of the time. But I mean, I haven't had a brain injury, and I forget those things sometimes as well.
Yeah.
But you possibly still forget things or still have those other symptoms and those other issues. You still have them. They're still part of your life. It's not, you've not sort of got, there's not been a magic spell that has been done that has released Carmen of all of that.
No, there isn't. But there have been some moments where like significant portions of functionality have come back, and I was like, oh, thank you. Whoever orchestrated that, thank you so much. And I'm underplaying it. Like there was a moment where memory started returning, and it was quite a significant moment after some acupuncture. And yeah, like that person that gave me that treatment is very dear to me, and in a professional capacity. And it also taught me what it feels like to be the client and to be like, that was such an important moment to me, and to express it to them. And it made me like cry at the time with relief. Yeah. And at the time, I didn't even know if it was going to be a permanent change. I just could sense that something had changed. And for this moment, I had memory. And that alone was like moment, enough.
That was
yeah.
And that really, I can't even imagine that like you used the word relief, just that sense of just gaining back a little bit of control in that moment must have been phenomenal. And I bet you had so much compassion for the person who treated you, and that person had so much compassion for you. And so therein lies that beautiful relationship where you can really serve and you can really receive. And that's what we want with our clients as well, don't we?
I think it has to be there. Sorry, I interrupted you. I think that two-way compassion I think it's at the heart of the interrelationship, because we are like not alone really. We are human beings that seek connection, that need it, thrive on it. Like
psychologically, it is. I mean, it's like loneliness has been statistically proven to be a bigger indicator of early death than obesity,
yes,
smoking. And so we're
yes,
told all these things like, we must, make sure that we stay at a healthy weight. We must not smoke. And yet nobody tells us we must connect. The NHS don't necessarily tell us that. And so it's an interesting exploration, because we have to take that responsibility ourselves, and we can find it in many different ways. But as business owners, we have this incredible opportunity to find that connection with the people that we work with. We have a choice. If I went to a workplace, it's got to be left up to whatever bugger employed me to employ other people that I feel that I can connect with, and I can really serve, and they can receive, and I can receive, and they can serve. That two-way thing. And I would have to be reliant on someone else setting that up. But I get to choose. I get
yeah,
to decide who I spend my day with. I get to decide to spend my time with people like you, and we get to have these conversations. And I get to feel good about that. And that's really, really powerful for my own healing and my own journey, and my own, not just my content, not just my business, but my life. Hence the podcast name. So I want to go back to
sure.
nice little, just reminding us what we're here. We're talking about this connection between compassion and ideal client. But so you are now, so you're starting to get to a place where you can function, where you can operate, where you can navigate the potential of running a business. Now, I may be wrong here, and you can correct me on this, but am I right in thinking that at this point, and this is like many other business owners that I speak to, you'd already made the decision to go self-employed, so you'd already made that, there was something else other than your industry that made that reality
Happen.
made that happen, made that decision for you. But you actually probably would have felt unemployable at the time. You'd have felt like, I can't get a job because I need to be able to manage my own diary. I need to be able to be in control. I'm in control of my own health, but I've still got to play
A delicate balance of how many hours can I work.
do that when you've got somebody else is in control of your time and your hours. And sadly, many situations in the employed world, they do feel like they own you when you're employed by them. So would that be that decision to go back to running your own business was because you didn't feel you could operate, or you wanted to?
I definitely wanted to. Like, there was a strong drive anyway, like before it happened. I suppose when it happened, the truth is I wouldn't be able to keep down a full-time job anymore. Like, I treat a lot of people with disability, and mine is a temporary one that's occurring over many years, but hopefully will eventually get to a stage where you can't really see it unless I tell you situation. But for many that have a permanent disability, it's still really hard in the workplace. Like, accessibility is poor. I think we really set standards on a default healthy population, and the reality is that doesn't.
Compassion.
Yeah, that, and also we all age. Like, we are actually going to become needing of compassion and accessibility at some point in our life in the future. Like, that's just a reality. And yet we are so obstinate in not wanting to help in that way. So I think, like, both are true. Like, I had a strong drive anyway. I am what my family would call belligerent with my goals.
Knowing how many courses and qualifications that you've gathered over the years, despite this completely debilitating brain injury and being a nuclear physicist, I think I agree with them. You're
another phrase.
You can tell them there was another vote on that for me in the best of ways.
Another phrase that they used to use is willfully obtuse.
Yeah, I'll go with that one as well. I think we need to sit. I think I need to sit down with your parents, with your family. I think that's the next step for us. Just so we can talk lovingly about you and how completely willfully obtuse you are.
I'd like to just rebrand it as extremely persistent and goal orientated. There you go.
You can say whatever you like. You can call it whatever you like. But I love it. I love it because that's one of the things that you bring. You've got so much knowledge on because what you did, didn't you? Correct me again if I'm wrong. That you always want to know more so you can help more. You want to help yourself, and you want to help your family. There's people in your family you've trained to be able to support better. So you're always trying to help people, including yourself, compassionately feel better, essentially. And so you've taken many different qualifications and courses, both for that's about the physical body and about the mind, because they're all interconnected, and the
pain isn't just in the brain, but it is also everywhere in the body, in the brain, in our emotions.
You have to understand that whole thing, and your drive to actually help people feel better, including yourself, which is genuinely rooted in compassion, is what has driven you to be so goal orientated or willfully obtuse or so when you started then, how did you as a business owner who is recovering on such a long, because it isn't
time scale,
you have to be incredibly patient with yourself. How does that show up in your, when you're dealing with that pain and that still memory loss? What difference did that make to your business? And did you have to learn to navigate with the particular things that came up that you found really challenging?
Yeah, there definitely were. Like there's the practicalities. Like for instance, the first time I went on a course again after that incident was about 2 years later, and I wasn't ready at all. And I was actually a teaching assistant, and it occurred to me like 10 minutes in, when someone was giving me instructions as to how the day was going to progress and how I was going to support the tutor. And I thought, oh my God, like I don't remember what she just said. And I was like, right, sticky notes are my friend for this week. And I like every instruction I wrote down like a scribe. And it was the only way I could function in that space and like make sure everybody got what they needed and like support in the way that I was there to support, but until that moment hadn't even considered would be a problem. So like that's one thing, like the practical. And on that side of thing, like I am always actively engaged in managing my energy. And I know the word energy gets like some short thrift, and people like, oh, the energy of the universe. Like, do you know what I mean? Like all that jazz, but in a very real way. I have to have, like, my little iPhone battery has to stay in the yellow. If it gets to the red, my like functionality drops off a cliff. And sometimes like I'm always very appreciative of my job, because when words fail, I can still be there in person with the way that I'm interacting, with the way I'm listening, with the way I'm touching, like there's something called therapeutic touch, and it's about almost like greeting and acknowledging a person's physicality, like when I lay a hand on a person to start assessing over the towels, there's a connection that's made in that moment that's like in the way that you touch. And it's a bit like welcoming a child home. It's like, I don't mind whatever's gone on, you're good, you're safe, you're going to be held. You can let it out here because it's safe. You don't need to do anything. I'm just welcoming all of it and all of who you are today. And it's not my job to change you. It's not my job to demand anything. I'm just welcoming you, like in all of you. here at this moment. And there's something about that is, I feel like, the embodiment of mindfulness and compassion. And I think, like, I give myself the permission when I'm tired at the end of the day, if I'm starting to slur my words slightly, like, I have a laugh and go, I can do my job in my Patrick Swayze voice, right? Because sometimes I hear a slur.
Is
and
that
I
what
go,
that was? Was that Patrick Swayze?
I mean, it's terrible. The thing is I can't make the slur happen
No,
when I'm
no,
fine.
I'm with you. Yeah. So, and I'm,
You
I'm
know?
glad that because if I was talking to you and you were slurring, it would mean that you were very tired, and I would be.
Yeah.
We need to be more compassionate to you here, Cameron. You need to go or do this again another time. This is not fitting of the conversation. So I'm glad,
And
but I think that what you described, then I've got to ask you, this space where you're able to hold someone and not that I don't even need to repeat. I'm not even going to try and repeat it because you described it so beautifully. And what I was thinking during that is, can we, in that moment, when we show up for other people, whether it is, like you mentioned, for a child, whether it is for children, whether it is for our family, whether it is for our business,
clients,
our
or
clients,
yeah.
can we show that to ourselves?
Well, I truly believe it actually, that compassion that we're able to offer to someone else, I think it deepens and deepens and deepens, like, our capacity to be compassionate. I truly believe it comes from how deep our internal, like, world of compassion is. So, like, when I receive,
Passionate we are to ourselves, the more we
yeah,
give to others.
yeah,
So actually, it is essential to. This brings us back to what you were saying at the beginning, but has that, that real life example, that concept, have this picture of you holding space in your therapy room in
mm,
such in such a wholehearted, holistic way. Meaning you are there for that whole person. You are meeting them where they are, and
mm,
I can and that allowing that energy, I use that word again, I don't know if it's the right word in this context, but and using that feeling and that openness, that expansion, and as you
yeah,
expand that sense of compassion, there is room. It's like a muscle. The more that expands, the more
yeah,
the more you practice using it, the better. I think that's the
yeah.
trying to
I think,
put in loads of analogies and loads of metaphors.
well, I think, like, you've nailed it, because so on one of the therapies I'm training in at the moment is called cranial sacral therapies. And it's all to do with listening in to the fluid drive between the spine and the spinal, the brain, lol, and the spinal cord. I love it.
This
As
is,
like,
can I just establish why Carmen is going to be like, these are the conversations I have on my client calls with her, right? And this is the sort of conversation I don't really have many times in, like, I don't really talk about, spinal fluid and things like that on a daily basis very often. 'Cause
sure.
it's not been a big part of my life. It's not been a big part of conversation in my life. But what you do is, in the middle of it, you'll just make it sound like, it'll feel like an absolute normal conversation that I completely can show up to as I am, despite my lack of knowledge of any of this stuff. And I can bring something to the table. And
Yeah.
suddenly talking about spinal fluid and laughing at the same time is hilarious. And
Well, I laughed at myself, so
yeah,
not to say brain.
because you said something wrong that I wouldn't even notice if you did. But there is compassion in our conversation, put it that way. So you are doing this. I interrupt. You are doing this. I was completely with you. Have I ruined you now?
I'm trying to remember what I was going to say, which is just funny given that I've just
Considering
told.
the whole conversation.
Yeah.
We have compassion for the fact that I excitedly interrupted you because you
Yeah.
made me laugh. Compassion for the fact that you forgot what you were going to say. And just generally share that. And
Yeah.
this is, so if I was to say who my ideal client is, I've done a series of a mini podcast series where I'm talking to myself or talking to the audience about ideal clients that
Mm-hmm.
I'm releasing now. So if you're listening to it, anytime you're listening to it, it's already out there. And in this mini series, I'm talking about like my ideal client, and my ideal client is, she's called Claire. I picked the name.
Hey.
She's 52.
Okay.
So, you know, there's lots of these markers that do not fit you.
Sure.
And when you get, I think she's a trauma therapist. Oh, there's some similarities.
Ooh.
It gets a bit
Hey.
closer when you go on the demographics, but the demographics only are there. It's just a made-up person, an amalgamation. The demographics are only there really to help me visualize that when I'm like, who's in the room, who do I want to talk to? But very often, as much as this imaginary person can appear, sometimes when I ask that question, it's Carmen that appears in my mind. And I have other clients that do the same. That's like, what would I want to say to that person today? What conversation would I want to have? Luckily, I don't start writing like, it would be too specific if I started writing some social media or an email or a blog about, you know, a conversation about spinal fluid or something. You know, that's
sure.
You know, it's not that precise, but it's just recognizing what I wanted to share was just in that moment of exchange between us as we're talking. This is the topic of this conversation, and this is, you know, Carmen's going to be on here. You are going to learn so much if you listen to this podcast from Carmen. And the way that, like, there's certain things with me that I have really, really loved and enjoyed, like as an experience, but haven't really been able to understand why. And Carmen will be like, that's because. and you know, there's so much that I love, the levels of depth we can take the conversations that we're going to have over the series of this. And you know, if you want Carmen on your podcast, if you're running a podcast, then I can guarantee she will bring some wisdom to the table. And
thank you.
So just returning, that was me just going on a total detour, but just recognizing the reason why I said that I wanted to do this more with you, and these conversations will continue. So,
and I love our conversation. I just say I love our conversations. Like, Lisa brings something huge to the table, like, okay, clarity, organization.
I think if like my mother heard this now, she'd be like, organization? Like what?
Like, yeah, getting to the point, conciseness. Like, you often say, well, what does your client need to know today, Carmen? And I'm like, I don't know.
But then 2 seconds later you do know, because all you need to do at that moment. And do you know what? I think that in that moment what we do is that we connect to, like, I feel that when I ask myself, what does my ideal client need to know right now, and when I sit and I ask that is what, like, my main question that I ask on a daily basis. I will say it to a client, and you know, today, right now, like in this moment. And there's a reason that question changes, and it goes back again to this compassion. It's meeting people where they are. And that's exactly what it is. And you're asking them, what do they need? And the reason I'm not saying what do they need to know, the reason I'm saying now, in this moment, because everything is temporary. Life is always moving in some direction.
Yes.
And we are just, you know, spinning at trillions of miles an hour on a ball in space. But we are here. And we have the beautiful opportunity and privilege to reach out and connect to people, and that brings a feeling that's like nothing else, because that is what it means to be human. To me, that's how I interpret the best part of the human experience. And so when we ask ourselves, what do they need to know right now, and we meet them compassionately where they are, with exactly what you said before, just like you do in that therapy room, we can do that in a different way. When we meet our ideal clients in our business, and when in our communication, in the way we reach out to invite them in, if we show up there with that compassion and hold space for where they are right now, then we also cannot, like exactly what you said, you cannot help but give it to yourself at the same time.
Yeah, and I think it comes from us. Like, it has to, like, like, and the more kindly I can speak to myself, the more I can just hold so much more space for others. Like, the reason I brought up that cranial technique is because it's inherent. That's what you're doing. Like every moment that you've
Remember that now.
yeah, every moment that you've engaged with trauma in yourself enables you to hold the ground. To like, the worst feeling receiving treatment ever is if you are the client and your body starts expressing trauma, which, okay, like it will if it's there. Lots of people have it. It
Can you give
depends
me an
whether
example of what that looks like?
it might freak some people out, but
Okay. Okay.
so like we
It's
have
a place for honest conversation. Maybe start as small as you can.
start small. So our tissues have a memory, like a literal physicality of memory. Like, so if I hold the space for someone's body to express itself, if there was a memory of trauma in their system, then they were running away from something, their legs would actually start to move and express what they did in that moment. And their leg would move spontaneously and recreate that feeling. And like the reason it's important is because when like a force came into their system when the injury happened, often the force is embedded in the structures, like all those connective tissues have hardened around like the
That makes sense.
angle that it came in at. And the reason why people get chronic pain sometimes is because the body has adapted around that pattern that's kind of solidified in them. And then all the other structures around it don't have the mobility that they once did. So like our viscera and our internal organs.
There's a ripple
yeah
effect. It's nothing, because everything's connected.
yeah
That trauma cannot be isolated. It has an impact on everything going on.
on everything.
I understood
yeah
that.
yeah absolutely. Like for instance, like not many people know that when you breathe and pulls down to let the air in, and when you breathe out it comes up
Can you
to
just say that
push the
last
air out.
20 seconds again? Because I'm not sure if it was, I don't know if it was just me that you froze for. I hope it
Okay.
was. just in case
No
it's for
problem.
everyone, it sounded very important. So something about breathing in and breathing out. That
Yeah, sure. When you breathe in, your diaphragm expands, and basically your lung capacity like opens and gets bigger, and that creates like a partial pressure that the air comes in, fills that space.
I'm breathing while you're saying it.
And when you breathe out, the opposite happens, and your diaphragm pushes back upwards, and the air is pushed out. What many people don't know is that your heart is connected to your diaphragm via ligaments. And the act of that diaphragm coming down and up like a plunger actually massages your heart. And if you didn't have that happening, your heart would have to like upregulate its neural activity. So it'd have to put more juice into its beats, because this latent mechanism that the diaphragm does isn't functioning so well. So if you imagine if there's a trauma that's come up the legs, broken into a pelvis, the pelvis is now healed, the bones are where they should be, but all that connective tissue, all of those fascial ligaments and tendons have like concreted around the torsion force, then it will start to impact, say, the diaphragm and all of those organs that rely on its movement to reduce the load of energy that it takes to keep you alive every single day. So you might look like you're absolutely fine, but you might have visceral pain through your abdomen and might not have any medical explanation as to why that's there. So then I come along and I take the leg and I hold it in a way of safety, and I enact and I enact the intelligence in those fascial tissues, and I just literally wait for the moment that the fascia, like, because it's a highly neural structure, recognizes that I'm safe, and your leg will go in to the shape that trauma was in when the pelvis broke, and it will corkscrew all the way in without me like doing any. I'm just following. I'm literally following. And then we will hold at the point of maximum impact and in that position, and then it will just come out and all of the structure unwind.
Undo. Is it an undoing? Because it
Yeah.
is like an undoing.
We call it unwinding because it's literally it's coming back out. And like the analogy that people use to try and describe it to like a member of the public is when you're like, you've got a chest of drawers, you've stuffed it full of like all your clothes. Like if you're anyone like me, they're not folded, they're all in there. And like some of the clothes have gone up the back of the drawer behind it into the next one. And you try and like pull it out and it's stuck. So you have to slide it in as far as you can go. And then you thread your arm through, you sort of give it a rummage, get those things out, and then you can slide it back.
Scientific, but I have had those moments. So
yeah,
it's really interesting because on so many levels, when you're saying something like that, I can't help but sort of visualize in my own body and think, you know, you were saying the breathing, and it's just even becoming aware and stopping. And as you're saying it, I'm thinking of pains and thinking of trauma that my body's experienced, and it's been minimal on a grand scale, but I'm 41, not really looked after myself, and I've got 3 kids, so probably quite traumatized actually. Well, now I say it like that. So we have to bring it to a close here, but I'm not I'm not disappointed because in the fact that there's more. I know there's more that we can say, but because I know we will. We know that like we'll come, and there will be a point, there'll be something that we explore, but bringing this combination of like, I think starting with this topic makes so much sense because it's one of my core values. It's one of the values in my business that I identify as how I want to show up in my business, how I want to write for my business, what conversations I want to be having. I want to be talking about compassion because I truly believe that's something that I noticed in the 10 years of being in business is how little self-compassion there is in the business world. And so that allows, and there's so much unhelpful discourse in the online world as a whole. And if you run in a business that's online, you can't help but engage with, you bump up against it at the very least, you know, there's no way. And so we have to have that enormous self-compassion as we're navigating through. So nobody else has navigated there's no blueprint for this. The technology and business and the world is moving so fast, especially, you know, accelerated with AI and COVID. And you know what I'm doing now, my mother couldn't have done. I couldn't have done 15 years ago what exactly I'm doing now. You know, things, we have to be compassionate with ourselves for the chaotic world that we are somehow existing in this space in. You know, it's madness, we're here at all. And we just have to make the very, very most of what we can. And so the best way to do that is to start with self-compassion. What mission-led content is rooted in,
and it's hard.
We're gonna keep having.
And it's really, really hard. It requires you to know yourself and to know your boundaries.
Awareness,
and to show up, and like in the days that you're not feeling so good, to just accept that that's where you are, and somehow like in doing so you allow others to not be perfect too, and that permission is what we give ourselves and then give somebody else as a result. Like somebody else goes, oh, it's okay to be imperfect, because of course it is. Of course it is. Like,
and again, that's something that the online world has, it's something that evolutionary is within us, because evolutionary, it makes sense that we would want to, you know, conform and be accepted, and the different status games that are the human mind plays. As you know, we're working from an evolutionary basis. Our brain has not evolved with the technology, and suddenly you put all of that online, and then you wrap your identity in your marketing, and then you wrap your financial stability in your and your worthiness wrapped in your sales, and you've got a recipe. And then wrapping with that, the risk of people saying negative things about you goes up 1,000. That's like massively going against our evolutionary
hierarchical tribe.
Absolutely. So there's so much that we are, you know, we are pioneers in this world. And we really need to be compassionate with ourselves as we navigate that.
Yeah.
And I don't think there's enough acknowledgement given to just how amazing, how we are all just doing the very best that we can with the resources that we've got. And that's, I don't, Brené Brown I got that from, but I think that's, you know, that goes way back. And that's what this podcast is about, and our conversation
yeah.
is always about.
And I think it's about like our belief structures too. Like I continuously remind myself, even when I'm grotty and tired, that no one is out there not trying to be the best person that they can be. No one's out there trying to be awful and unkind. Like if they are being that way, there's a reason.
Yeah,
and
it doesn't
yeah,
mean that we have to be it doesn't mean that we can't hold place for justice. It doesn't mean that, but justice doesn't, even that word is loaded.
sure.
Okay, right. This is another conversation. Let's leave that open to
Okay.
like how, let's say that we will take the end of this conversation, put a label on it and a direction on it and a clarity on it, and that will be our next episode we do together.
That sounds great.
Yeah,
See,
that was going to really, and I have got the MLC Academy. You've got an appointment, and the MLC Academy are just waiting on on the doors. And we're gonna be doing a co-working session, writing a piece of content based on our values. So that's what I'm doing with my clients right now. Carmen, you're in the academy. You can get the replay if you want to get the replay. It'll be emailed out later. If you want to join my academy and get access to stuff like this, let me know. And if you follow Carmen, because if you, whether you're Newbury way, aren't you? If people are looking for
South Oxfordshire near Didcot, just off the A34. We're like, easy to get to.
But don't forget, she is developing
online
free content, and so if you're not in the area, there is free content, and there are courses that are being developed where you will be able to get her support in this way, just like I support Carmen. It's still massive connections can come. I would never know Carmen if it wasn't for the crazy internet online world that we live in, and there's a lot that she's going to be doing. She's going to be bringing to the space, so keep an eye out. Thank you so much for episode 3, but let's call it episode 1 of the new series between Carmen and Lisa, Put the World to Rights. Let's call it that. Right, loads of love. Take care.
You too.
Bye.
See you later. Bye.